Hello, my name is John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from Prince George, and we are here downtown Prince George. Prince George is the capital of Northern British Columbia for all those that are all over the world, and it's a bit of a winter day in Prince George, a little bit snowy on the outside, but it's still a nice, very nice day. We have a special guest today, and his name is Dana Meise, and he's a special guest for us. Dana, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me a little bit about yourself and where you're from. And
Well, I'm born here in Prince George, raised most of my life here. I'm a forestry worker, and yeah, that's about all there is to tell, really.
Okay, so you got your training here in Prince George, and you have a fairly large family. You say you have a lot of family living also around Prince George.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
And then a lot of history around Prince George. Prince George is, for our guest, is one of the major lumber towns in northern British Columbia. There's a lot of sawmills all around. Was your family also involved in the lumber industry?
Yeah, in fact, there's some of the mills in town. I mean, you have to almost be a Meise to work at them.
Right.
My family came over here originally because of the lumber boom.
Right.
So they're logging truck drivers, fallers, worked in the mills, worked out in the yards, worked as operators. All the way back to horse logging.
Right. Where did he come from? Or where did he originate?
We were German-Russian Mennonites.
Okay.
So before we basically came from Winkler, Manitoba. Right. Well, other than Europe.
Yeah.
From Winkler, Manitoba to Saskatchewan, then down to the Okanagan.
Yeah.
To build some of the Rutland area, and then come up here for the lumber boom.
Yeah. And when was that? When they came here approximately?
I think they abandoned the farms during the 30s.
Yeah.
Right? And then went down to the Kootenays.
When they were in
the Okanagan.
Right.
And then came up here during the late 40s, early 50s.
Yeah. And then and if you go way back in your family, is a Mennonite family that likely came out of northern Germany, northwestern Germany area, and that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They moved around quite a bit. I don't know too much of the history, just because they were prosecuted wherever they went.
Yeah.
So they were moved as Mennonites, so they kind of moved around.
Yeah.
I do know that there's a town in Belgium named Meise.
Yeah.
Same name as me.
Meise, yeah. And then, my wife's family has a Mennonite background, and they came out of northern, mid-western Germany and kind of moved up from Poland, Russia. And then a lot of them emigrated to try to get away from being suppressed to Saskatchewan or Manitoba. Winnipeg, has quite a lot
just south of Winnipeg and Winkler, yeah.
Yeah, and then I remember that because we visited quite a bit of her family, and I've always been interested in those particular groups that stayed very close together, were very involved in farming and very industrious.
Yeah.
And if I look here, Vanderhoof, another area where there are a lot of Mennonite families and those kind of things.
And my family, when they came up after the 30s, those generations were just different. They sort of abandoned that faith of being Mennonites.
Right.
And kind of went into the camps and sort of just became the modern Canadian.
Right.
In a sense.
Right. Yeah, other state and in the dress and in the habits of
there was a separation there.
Yeah.
But for the most part, my grandfather. Now I might have this wrong, but I think there was 14 to 16 in the family.
Okay.
Right. So there's they all came up here.
Yeah.
So they're
big family.
Big family, and then each one of them had 5 to 6 some 8.
And usually had big kids.
Yeah,
a lot
like,
of kids.
that was
as
all
well.
part of it. And initially they came up here and did lumbering in the winter.
Yeah.
And they worked in the forest in the wintertime. And in the summertime, they all own farms, and some of them still do. Little small farms. So the
Yeah.
farming never left. A lot of
No.
my family still does it.
Yeah, that always kind of stayed with them. And then,
Yeah.
as you said, in the forest industry was totally different. Then you had smaller sawmills. There were up to 600 sawmills around the Prince George region.
Yeah, there's never ending work as well.
Yeah, and they had those little portable mills, and they hauled them into the bush. And it was all hard work, though.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
My grandfather told me some good stories about horse logging. He took care of the horses.
Yeah.
That was his job.
And they used the horses for skidding.
Before he was faller, yeah.
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 And they skidded the trees after they fall them. They skid the trees from out of the bush to the sawmill.
Yeah, he was just in the cusp between when they were starting to move to machinery.
Right.
Like chainsaws back then were still ran rough and they weren't very efficient compared to later. And my grandfather even went on to teach at the college at CMC falling.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then your dad, you said, was also in the forest industry?
Yeah, for a while. We moved to northern Saskatchewan, where there was a big lumber boom up there.
Yeah.
And the cost of living was cheap, and we still had family that farms there, of course.
Yeah.
And so we moved up there, and my dad was an equipment operator,
Right.
for buncher and loader and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, the forestry, and then was just everywhere I looked.
Yeah, and then when you moved to Prince George, again, he worked in the forest industry here as well, or?
No, my dad ended up starting a small business in Red Deer.
Okay.
The forest industry was too hard on our family.
Right.
He was in camp all the time, so there was that bit of that tension.
Right.
So my dad started a business in Red Deer, and no sooner did he start the business and it was flourishing when he had a brain aneurysm.
Oh no.
And then he ended up being permanently disabled.
Oh no.
Yeah.
How old was he then?
29.
Oh no, that was so young.
Yeah.
And then there is something that had an impact. Obviously, this had a major impact on your life and your family.
Oh, it was huge. We went from being a business owner and living in this big white house, being doing well. As a kid, you never know, right?
Right.
You just know your day-to-day life, but to all of a sudden literally being on welfare, losing everything.
Yeah.
So that was a huge impact.
Yeah.
I think the biggest impact, though, was watching him recover from it. Like watching my dad have to learn how to, while other kids were doing other things with their dad, like fishing and hunting and all that kind of stuff, I was feeding my dad with a straw and a tube into his nose and into his stomach.
No,
You
so
know?
he was
Stuff like that.
extremely affected by it. Huh?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It was a huge brain aneurysm.
Yeah.
Like it was probably about as close you can get to dying without dying.
Yeah. And then in a way, what you are known for is that you did this amazing thing of walking across Canada, and not only did you do that part, but you didn't only walk it from ocean to ocean, from the Atlantic to the Pacific, but you also walked all the way from Vancouver all the way to the North Pole, really.
Well, yeah, the Arctic Ocean, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, not
What
quite to North Pole.
motivated you to? Because how many kilometers were involved there?
21,000.
And it took you 10 years.
10 years to complete it, yeah.
And you wore out 27 pairs.
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah. What motivated you to do that?
I think what it was watching my dad learn how to walk again. Like he would start trying to get out of his chair, and it would take him months till he just did stand up. And it would take him even more months to be able to walk across the room. Then even longer before he could get outside. pretty soon he could walk wherever he wanted to. And anyone who knew my dad, he lived in Simon Fraser Lodge now, knows that my dad used to love to walk. So he'd walk everywhere. And if I wanted to spend time with him, it was impossible to spend time with him without walking with him, because you couldn't get him to sit down.
Right.
Because that was his only freedom.
Yeah.
His only freedom was walking.
Yeah.
So in his brain, he memorized where everyone lives, and he used to walk to everyone's houses.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to go visit somebody, you'd have to walk with my dad. And my dad would walk really slow. Like he'd take a step and then stop, a step and then stop, a step and then stop.
Yeah.
So when you do a distance that would take you or I 15 minutes, it would take my dad half an hour, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And so I learned this tremendous amount of patience from him, because, you know, you're like, come on, Dad, you know, geez, you know, and then pretty soon before you know it, you just accept the pace you're at.
Yeah.
So the patience of that walking really, really struck me. And then when he lost his ability to walk through a stroke again, it was like they took it all away from him again, and he was in a wheelchair.
So then he got back to being able to walk, and again got another stroke.
And then lost his ability to walk forever this time.
Yeah.
Totally wheelchair bound. And I just remember taking for granted, like, so many people hated walking. Like, even on my walk, you'd be absolutely shocked of how many times I'd be walking along a trail on a rail line, and next to it is a road with mailboxes. And I'm not even joking you. This is not a joke. This is real. People would climb in their cars on these driveways that weren't even that long, drive to their mailboxes, get their mail, and then drive back up to their homes. And people complain about the walking. Like, I don't want to walk to the store 3 blocks away.
Yeah.
And it was something that I did in forestry all the time, the discipline. Sometimes you're in waist deep snow and you're up on super slope, and it can take you hours to make it just 500 meters, 800 meters.
Yeah.
You know? And so you have this tremendous patience that comes with not only forestry, but with my dad. And so I knew I'd have the patience to do the walk, so I decided, why not give it a shot? No one had ever done the world's longest trail before. Like, it was considered to be, I was told by so many people that it was going to be impossible, and I was laughed at a lot, especially in the beginning when I was looking for sponsors. Nobody wanted to commit to that.
No. Because they didn't believe you could do it, right?
It's the equivalent of walking around the world, right?
Yeah.
The distance.
Yeah.
Because it's not the highway. People confuse my walk with being on a highway.
No.
And they also confuse it with me having some support vehicle.
Yeah.
I was alone.
The whole time? Over the whole...
I had people join me. I had a friend come out and join me for a couple of weeks out of Ontario, going to the cities like Hamilton and parts of Toronto and all that. And then I had a Belgian join me randomly.
Yeah.
And that's quite an interesting story unto its own. But joined me from Dawson City to the Arctic Ocean.
Wow. That was a long way to go to.
1,000 K he walked, yeah.
Yeah, 1,000 Ks. And so you started then on the Atlantic Ocean. So where did it all start?
Cape Spear, Newfoundland, Canada's easternmost point.
And when was that?
The Trans-Canada Trail didn't go to the Arctic Ocean at the time. I mean, the Atlantic Ocean. So technically May 6th is when the journey started. But I hit the trail on May 8th, officially.
Okay.
Now the trail actually begins at the Atlantic.
Right.
But so it was kind of a section I just walked because I was the romantic idea of starting in North America's easternmost point.
Right.
I had to.
Right.
Even though it wasn't officially part of the trail.
Right.
Just like Canada's southernmost point wasn't officially part of the trail, but I was so close I had to touch it.
Yeah.
I had to do it.
Yeah. With the cameras and news media, or did you not publicize it at all, really?
Nobody wanted to invest in anything in that. Like,
Right.
some people did some media releases, but
What year was that at, Dana?
2008.
2000, not all that long ago then, really, because some other people walked or did partial walks across there, like Terry Fox did a partial walk, became very, very public. Did you want this to be just your venture?
I was happy with it unfolding the way it did.
Yeah.
Because I really wanted it to be my journey.
Yeah.
as soon as you get other people vested into you, then all of a sudden you have to be somewhere at a certain time. And I tried to avoid that because everyone, I don't know how to put this without sounding pompous. A lot of politicians, you have to work around their times. So they'd be like, Danny, you have to be in the city in 11 days.
Yeah.
And that means I got to do a marathon a day for 11 straight days with a full pack in the pouring rain or snow.
Yeah.
Just so I can meet somebody to make the trail look good and shake their hand.
Yeah.
And I don't want to knock anyone down. There was a lot of great people I met. But at the same time, I also met some good people in those 11 days that I couldn't spend time with or miss some good opportunities because I had to be on somebody else's clock.
Yeah.
And I really resented being on other people's clock.
Yeah.
On a journey that was of my own doing and making.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because somebody decided that these people were way more important than other people.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I kind of didn't shy from the media. So if the trail put me up in the front and center and I had to do some interviews, I was always open to it because I loved promoting the trail.
Okay.
And so I became a spokesman, whether they wanted me to be or not. They ended up loving me to be.
Yeah.
So I did all the interviews just to give the trail the press that I thought it deserved. But I'd always defer most of the talks to either about my dad or just about the trail itself.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't so much about me.
No.
No.
No. And then just on the practical side, where did you sleep? Did you have a tent or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you and the food you had to kind of buy along the way and.
Yeah, sometimes you'd pack food and then you'd look on a map and see what was ahead. And sometimes you'd get to a place where you thought you'd have food and there'd be nothing there. I remember one time in Newfoundland, I got to a place and I ran out of food. And it looked like there used to be this store there. And everyone's like, yeah, there's a store there. But when I got there, it turns out that it was closing down.
Yeah.
Mostly because big box stores had come into a community nearby.
Yeah, yeah.
And I couldn't make it to the box store, too far away.
Yeah.
It's like an hour drive. So it's 3-day walk for me.
Yeah.
So I bought what they had left, so for 3 days I lived on these molasses cakes and chocolate bars and chips, which wasn't ideal, right?
But no.
So until I could get to the next town that actually had a grocery store where I could get things. But in order so I wasn't on the side of the road cooking all the time and wasting time, because so I'd eat just things I could snack on. So it was always like, like Cliff bars and protein bars and something protein, a meal replacement. I could just shake and drink it.
Yeah.
And the reason I did that is because I could do that so fast on the fly, because my day was spent walking to 30, 40 Ks or whatever it was, or 20K. But the real goal was to find something interesting and spend time there to learn about it.
Right.
Or somebody or something interesting, maybe
Right.
a historical part. So that's why I didn't waste any time setting up some elaborate camp with cooking food and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I got up, packed, and ate as I went to save as much time possible in case something interesting came up.
So you tried to, you had a goal of doing about 20 or 30 Ks a day, or?
Yeah, it all depended. There was some sections where I call it the grind, where it's pouring rain, there's nothing really to see.
Yeah.
You just get through it. And
Yeah.
so you put in as many kilometers as you can. My body would start getting tired after 40, 50K,
Yeah.
right? You start getting into that range. Anything past 60K, you start getting really sore.
Yeah.
Because usually those days you're on flat rail line or something.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, it's actually harder. It takes longer to do 40, 50K through a traditional trail, right?
Yeah.
But it's easier on the body once you're conditioned than it
Yeah.
is the long flat stuff. The long flat stuff just kills the hip or the foot, or you know, it's just the same repetitive motion.
Yeah.
And that stuff's way harder.
Yeah. Did you have people knowing about it then, that if you arrived in a city, or?
It depends on where I was. At first, Newfoundlanders would just call their they'd say, I know somebody you can stay with, and then call their friend just up the trail, because the trail there's their old rail line, and they were like connected just through each other.
Yeah.
You know, so they would call each other up, say, this guy's coming, and so I'd have a place to stay once in a while, and it was a lot of word of mouth. Same with Cape Breton, was word of mouth. Nova Scotia, not so much. PEI, not so much. New Brunswick was really good to me. I really enjoyed New Brunswick.
Yeah.
And then Quebec was just meeting people, and they just brought me in to their homes oftentimes, even with the language barrier. Ontario was so big, you couldn't lump it into what the experience was like.
Yeah.
Like one place, you're in the city of Toronto, I was treated well because I had places to stay.
Yeah.
Outside in the fringes of Toronto, you're not treated so well because you're a stranger with a backpack.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I always felt the closer you get to a city without being in the city, the harder it is for you. The more people are untrustworthy.
Yeah.
Except these one people out of Toronto just brought me into their house, fed me dinner, and then said, we got to leave. You can just hang out at our house. And they had this giant pool I could use with a hot tub. And
oh my God.
They just left me this mansion of a house all to myself, and I got to stay in their guest house.
Oh my God.
And they just left us, help yourself to the bar, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, yeah.
So I had a couple cold beers and went for a swim. And then they caught me on a day I was exhausted, tired. So I just went to bed. And the next morning I woke up and they made me a nice breakfast when they got home. And
wow.
Yeah, so you never know. Some people were like that. You never know. And then other people were more like the shotgun.
Yeah, yeah.
We're not waiting for you.
Who is this guy?
You're right, you're right. So.
And then you went through the prairies.
Yep.
You know, and then into Alberta. A lot of ups and downs there.
I don't want to talk negative about any province, but there's certain mindsets, like Manitoba, for example, were huge into the trail. So they knew what I was doing. So communities would greet me.
Yeah.
Like I met the premier and like just a lot of politicians, and I got to go to a Winnipeg game on the owners' tickets, you know, like stuff like that. I was treated really well. And then you get to Saskatchewan, and they didn't like the idea of the trail. They thought more of it was an invasion of their land, and they were really they liked me as a person. Yeah. As the person I was, they invited me into their homes, but really hated the idea of the trail. So I did some morning shows, and I got some press there because I had mentioned this. And then I had my stuff stolen and burned at a particular place. Yeah, I lost everything, my camera, my equipment. In fact, I finished my hike to the Pacific without a camera, except for my phone, because I couldn't afford a new one.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And then whatever clothes and tents and stuff I got donated by a local company that helped me get back on my feet. So
oh, my God.
It almost ended my journey that year, but it didn't.
So then you came through Alberta.
Alberta treated me really well. Alberta really treated me really well. I had a pretty good time there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, the prairies were the biggest challenge because of the long flat stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, it's one thing to drive it, try to walk it.
Yeah.
And the distance I walked, just prairies alone, was well over 5,000 kilometers.
Wow.
Just prairies.
Yeah.
Like when you drive the highway, you don't even drive that far.
No.
So trying to walk the prairies was a real challenge mentally.
Yeah.
Knowing, like, I remember walking for 2 straight days, looking back and still seeing Regina. I can see it plain as day. There's the glow in the evening. Yeah. You know, and I'm like, I'm almost
that's 2 days out.
2 days walking, and I can still see the city and make buildings out.
Yeah, it looks like you're not making any headway at all.
I don't feel like I am. And then, you know, things that people wouldn't understand is like when it gets really windy there's nowhere to hide. So the wind will blow you so hard. Yeah. And the worst day I ever had wasn't climbing over the mountain passes or the heavy snow. I was up to my knees in snow or thighs going over some of the passes for 30, 40 kilometer days. Those were tough. Don't get me wrong, but the hardest day I ever had was a windy day in Manitoba when the wind was blowing from behind so hard that it was screaming in my ears, so I couldn't even listen to my headphones. And I'm trying to slow down with my feet to slow me from a full-on run. And after 40 kilometers, I was so sore I couldn't walk for days.
So don't you get to the point of saying, hey guys, I've done it now, thank you very much, I'm going to go home?
No.
But that was not available to you?
That wasn't an option.
No. You were going to finish it?
Yeah.
And so then you continued, and then you came into BC.
Yeah. BC was the home stretch, but BC was obviously like, I rarely ever mention BC because I just take it for granted. And I don't mean to. Because everybody assumes that either one coast and Cape Breton or certain areas or Lake Superior is more beautiful than any other area. But each area, each province and each place had its own beauty.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Yeah.
Like there's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I try to remind people of that.
Yeah.
Because it's my own province. So, you know, I try to mention the Cabell Valley and other places. But when it was, for me as a British Columbian, as soon as I hit those mountains and hit those mountain trails and got up and over into the Alpine, back down and up into the Alpine again, that's when I was like a goat.
Yeah.
Right? That's where I excelled.
Yeah.
I was home again. And so my heart was just warm and I felt at home.
Yeah.
Right? So for me, the trails were more challenging as far as the slope and, you know, having to go through these passes and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And of course, it was getting winter time. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
So doing those in the winter was challenging too. And the wildlife, you know, I went through some pretty sketchy cougar territory.
I would say.
Where I could see all the prints of the cougar and you could see the deer prints, and there's a cliff on one side on this old rail line and a cliff on the other side, and you're just sitting there going, oh man, this is perfect ambush zone.
Exactly.
So I just would put a headlamp on backwards to try to confuse anything and just hike by the moonlight as best I could. And yeah.
So as you went through BC, you ended up in Vancouver?
Yep. I zigzagged Vancouver for days and days to get through all the trail there.
Yeah.
That was a really good section. I don't really like the cities in particular.
Yeah.
But it wasn't so bad, I guess. There was some nice stuff there. But I had to do some big distances again.
Yeah.
Because I was meeting with some media people and some politicians and the chief again. So again, I had to do some big days. I was up at like 4 o'clock in the morning to get this 30K in before I had to meet these people.
Yeah.
Just after doing a huge day the day before.
Yeah.
So cities are always go time.
Yeah.
And if you're going to follow the trail as it's laid out, like as what I set out to do, it doesn't make sense to people why I would go. You know, the trail, for example, would be like walking Prince George, the trail along the river edge.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, yeah.
When the quickest way is to just cut across. Why wouldn't you just cut across? It's like, well, that's not where the trail is.
Yeah.
Right? So a lot of that was people like not understanding the trail. So they'd be like, why don't you just go straight over here to the ferry? And
exactly.
It's like, no. You see, I know it's an hour walk to the ferry, but I got to do this 4 hour.
Yeah.
You know, hit all these spots.
So now you've walked across Canada and completed it. Did you then pause or took some time off before you turned north?
Well, turning north was interesting because I finally got a sponsorship that I wanted. I got Canadian Geographic to partner with me. Good. So they named me Expedition of the Year.
That's a good one.
Yep. Yeah. So then I was going to do the Arctic section. And unfortunately, I couldn't complete the whole entire distance. A lot of the trail was just so gone and worn out. It put me behind by a month or more. And I couldn't make it to the Arctic in time. It was just too, like when I should have been doing, you know, averaging 20, 30K a day, I'd make 12 kilometers in 16 hours.
Yeah.
Of just pure trying to sludge through these swamps and like just absolute hard work and wading through rivers and stuff.
So you went through BC going north and you ended up, I know, but that's where you joined, or the Belgian guy joined you in Dawson Creek, which is mile 0.
No, Dawson City.
Oh, Dawson City.
Yeah.
In the Yukon.
In the Yukon.
Okay, so you went from
Dawson Creek all the way up through on the Alaska Highway.
Did you follow the Alaska Highway?
Yeah, that's considered the trail. That's the only way they could make a trail up there.
Yeah. And then you got to Lower Post, and then Watson Lake, which is right, the first settlement inside the Yukon border
Yep.
is Watson Lake. Yeah.
Yeah, went to Watson Lake. And so I ended up in Watson Lake for a little while because I was injured.
Yeah.
And then when the injury, I was there over a month.
Just recovering?
Living in my tent, trying to recover.
Yeah.
Debating whether or not, and winter was setting in. So then I walked on to Whitehorse. And then finally in Whitehorse, I had to just admit that I couldn't make it the rest of the way. I was just too injured. Like, I'd already been injured for a while.
Yeah.
And I was trying to push it. So the Arctic took me a while to finish because I just kept, just kept getting these injuries. And that's from carrying the heavy pack and going through everything I did.
So what time of year was it now?
By this time, it's December.
Yeah, this can get very, very cold.
Yeah, cold
in the
and
Yukon.
dark. Yeah. So I finally had
And
to
dark,
call it.
Because it's the land of the midnight sun. That means that it's dark all winter.
Yeah.
Pretty much, right?
Interestingly enough, I ended up finishing the walk all the way to the Arctic Ocean in November.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting pretty bad frostbite then.
Yeah.
And got caught in the Arctic tundra, and it was quite the challenge.
Yeah. So the fellow from Belgium, how did he know you were there?
I was preparing my gear, and a CBC cameraman, and actually he works for CBC now as a commentator, I think. But we became friends, and so he was going to take me back to where I left the trail. So I had to get some gear repaired and stuff like that. So I repaired some gear, and so I had all my gear laid out in Dawson City. And he come up and he asked me what I was doing, and I told him. He says, "I want to walk too." And I said, "I'll tell you what. If you go get yourself some groceries, and you have your backpack and everything, I'll let you walk with me.
Yeah.
And then you make it as far as you can. And if you decide to quit, you can hitchhike anytime. People will pick you up, no problem." And so he said, "Okay." So he went to the little store and he bought himself his food, and he came back. And then we
He's
started
ready to go?
We started walking together, yeah.
Yeah. So, and he stayed with you all the way to...
Right up until the end.
Yeah.
He had to catch a flight. So at the end, I was, I was healing. I hurt myself. So I had to take an extra week off. But I told him he can go ahead. So he finished the last little bit on his own. And then I came in behind him and finished on my own.
Right.
So, because he had to catch a flight to get back home, because he had already been in Canada for his maximum amount of time he was allowed.
Yeah.
So he had to get going.
Yeah.
And so I didn't think he was actually going to go without me, but he did, and he made it. He only had 100K or 120K left to do, and he managed to do it in 3 days, I think.
So what motivated him to do that? Did you talk to him quite a bit during your trip? Or?
Oh, yeah, we got to know each other really well. We're still friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had some weird reasons, but they were his reasons. He said he just wanted to quit smoking and quit drinking.
Yeah.
So he picked the remotest place he could pick,
Yeah.
and wanted to get out into the wilderness and go for a long walk and find himself.
Yeah.
And I said, "You picked this awful time of year." And he was unprepared. I was prepared. 2 sets of good rain gear, clothes that were good, sleeping bag that was good. He had nothing. When it started raining, we got lucky with weather. But when it did start raining, I said, "Hey, we got to get your rain gear on, man. This storm's coming quick." And so he pulls out an umbrella. That's what he had in the subarctic. Just
Not the
before
right thing to have.
Not when we're dropping below zero at night. And
No.
so I gave him my spare rain gear. And then the one thing he did bring, though, was a snowsuit. A one-piece snowsuit, which he got lucky that he brought it because it got cold. We were sleeping in minus 20, minus 25 outside regularly. And he was just, so I had extra socks for him. I had extra, he was wearing jeans.
Oh my God.
He had no idea what he got himself into. When I told him it would be a month before we had cell service again, he didn't believe me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it turned out that it was longer than a month because we had some gear issues. He hurt himself, then he got sick, and I had to wait for him to get better, and so we ended up being a month and a half, and he thought it was really funny too, because here was this guy in Europe connected to the world all the time, and he thought the whole world was going to be ending in a sense, like people are going to be worried about him and everything. He was disappointed to find out that nobody really cared that much.
Yeah.
Got the odd email saying, "I hope you're okay."
Yeah.
But other than that, he thought it was in his mind,
Yeah.
being unconnected from social media for a month and a half, he was kind of disappointed on how the world just kept going.
Yeah.
It was kind of funny.
Hard to imagine, right? So that he came all the way from Belgium, came all the way up to Canada, to Vancouver likely, and made his way all the way up to Dawson City, which is a long way to go, and then walked all the way from there to the Arctic, right?
When COVID first happened, I was trying to get a hold of him, couldn't get a hold of him. And then I asked him, I finally got a hold of him, and I said, he's like, "I can't believe this COVID thing." And I said, "Well, what are you doing now?" He says, "I just finished taking a camel trip across the Sahara." And I was like, so him and I talk again. I said, "Look, I've gained weight. I went into a depression after my hike." And I said, "I hurt my back really bad, and been injured." I said, "But when I get better, we should do a trip." I said, "But I want to come to Europe, and we'll do one." So we want to plan a nice long trail in Europe, maybe the Camino or something.
Yeah.
Something, and do another adventure together.
Now, the one thing that you said is that it took you time to readjust to normal life after you came back from these tours that took 10 years of your life. And then how did you readjust to what we consider to be normal living?
I still haven't totally readjusted. It's because another thing that was different about the hike was when I was finished the 6, 8, 9 months I was gone, sometimes a year, I would fly from wherever I was directly to wherever I was working, and literally within a day or two, be right back in the forest working.
Yeah.
By myself in the forest.
Yeah.
Come home after work, eat, go to bed, wake up, go back to work, eat, do 4-in-1s or whatever we were doing. As soon as that contract is up and the spring times comes, I'd get back on a plane and fly. So there was a time I wasn't home for 5 years and fly straight back to the trail and hike. So I was completely almost isolated because I was always, and I was so focused on the hike that it was really hard for me to readjust. Yeah.
Yeah.
I always felt like I was so used to sleeping in strange places and, and like the routine was hard for me. Like I just filled my time. And then especially after I got injured, after an old injury come rearing its head and
was that your back?
My back, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was so severe I was bedridden, and then the depression hit. Not only was my hike over, but I was bedridden and my favorite thing in the whole world to do is walk.
Yeah.
And whenever I have a stress in my life, I can walk it off.
Yeah.
There's not a single challenge that I can't face after a long walk.
Yeah.
And so when that was taken away, that was really, really hard.
Then you tumbled into depression.
Deep depression, yeah.
So how did you deal with that?
I dealt with it by drinking a lot.
Yeah, that was not good either.
And that's how I put the weight on it.
Yeah. And
now I'm not. But so now the new challenge is to lose the weight and get back on the trail. Yeah.
So you got into drinking, and then you don't mind me talking about it, right?
No, I'll be totally open book.
Yeah, and so then, that was a form of defense, or kind of putting your mind into a different place. That the drinking would do to a certain extent, but it was not good for you, and you knew it. And then at some point you had to say, stop.
Yeah.
How did that go?
Well, it was hard to stop because I was drinking so much that my body was reacting really negatively. So when I finally decided to end drinking, I did it in a way the doctor said I shouldn't have done it. And I didn't go ask for any help or professional help. I just quit. and like I went through a really, really, really difficult
Not
time.
many people can do that, right?
Yeah.
They need help, and in terms of going to AA or
Yeah.
a 12-step program or get counseling or something, to go quit cold turkey.
Well, I'll still have the odd glass of wine. It's different now, my relationship with it, because I can still have some wine and stuff, or a glass of scotch with a friend, and that's fine,
Right.
But I don't really drink. I don't really enjoy it that much anymore, except unless it's in a social environment.
Right.
But before, I was just drinking the hike was over when I was in a tremendous amount of pain, and doctors couldn't seem to figure out how to fix me.
Right.
And then I came back here, and some doctors said, we have this new thing we're doing, and we'd like to try it out on you, and it's been working.
Right.
And my pain's gone away, and it's staying away. So I'm almost completely off painkillers now.
Good.
My flexibility's coming back. I'm going to be able to move more, and the more I can move, then that's going to help me lose the weight, get my confidence back, and get
Right.
back on the trail.
Right.
Because some of my favorite trails anywhere I've ever been are right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, my favorite places to go.
Yeah. And you have a lot of support around here as well. You have a very large family all around you, right?
Yeah, I've got a good support group here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to have a meeting at 3:00, but then you have a commitment, and so we did to have the meeting at 1:00 today, which is good. But so it's kind of, I know that you're working also right after this interview. You'll be working in the forest industry. So tell us a little bit about that. What are you doing?
I'm not actually working in the forest industry anymore.
Okay.
No. Nobody in the forest industry who has an office job gives those office jobs up.
Okay.
So when I left forestry for a few years, I kind of gave up my position. So right now I'm just working at a place called Replay. It's a call center.
A place what?
Replay.
Replay?
It's a call center.
Okay.
Yeah. So I take calls from like BCAA or coroner calls, or for the city of Prince George, I take their after hours calls.
Okay.
So so that was my way of getting my foot in the door with an office job, so that we're there for the future. Like, I'm getting older now.
Yeah.
My body can't take. I have to choose, basically. I have to choose being able to hike in the forest for fun and enjoying the trails, or I can go back to work outside in forestry and destroy my body,
Yeah.
because I can't do that job anymore without destroying it. So I'm going to choose getting office experience, getting really good on the computer, and a whole new set of challenges.
So you work in a call center now.
Yep.
And so actually, then do I have it right? Really, that the 10 years that you did your walk across east to west and or west to east, and then north to south or south to north, took so much of your life that it became part of you, and you're still trying to readjust to the world without it?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Because I was so free, and I was completely on my own schedule.
Right.
And I tended to work really hard
Right.
on my own schedule.
Right.
Right? Harder than I work when I'm on someone else's schedule.
Right.
Not to say that I don't have a good work ethic.
No.
But when you work for yourself, you tend to be more motivated.
Yeah.
And I think I'm trying to find a place in my life where I can replicate that.
Yeah. And you're still looking.
Still looking. I have some ideas for the future.
Yeah.
Absolutely. For a year down the road or more.
Yeah.
I have some plans.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've had to really stop and think long term.
Yeah.
And so, the 10-year hike was long term, but I broke it down into seasons.
But I'm not asking you how old you are, but you to me don't look all that old. I'm 81. Yeah, so that's maybe old. I don't even think that's old, actually, to be honest with you. But you still got a lot of life ahead of you. So
Oh, I got a lot left to give.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now that the back problem is getting fixed,
Yeah.
and the weight will come off, and I can get my health back, I got plenty of time left.
yeah.
Yeah.
So then the question then becomes that what motivated you to do all of this, that brought you all the way to as far east as you can go, to start your walk across Canada, and then complete that, in numerous of months, and then walk all the way from as far south as you can go in Canada to the furthest north. You did it really, but drove you to start all of this was because of your dad and what happened to him and what limited him to keep him mobile. And did it do for you what you had hoped it would do?
Yeah. I mean, the lull in the last few years has been, after the hike, my goals haven't panned out. I'm still working on the book. The book ended up being almost as challenging as the hike itself. But yeah, I mean, what it's applied is if I can achieve what I've achieved, which is, the longest hike ever recorded in history,
Right.
I can achieve
In the world.
Of anybody.
Of anybody.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah, billions of people, and I'm the only one.
Yeah.
So,
Billions of people.
yeah.
Right.
And I was the only one to not only get to the trail first, but to do it first and still be the only one to walk it all.
Right.
I still am the only one.
Right.
And so if I can achieve that, and if I can break it down and set goals and every day achieve that, then I can achieve anything else I set my mind to. So although there's been a few years of lull in my life and I'm wondering what I'm going to do next, I'm still building a plan and implementing it and hopefully going to give it a shot. And I think that if it wasn't for COVID, I actually would be doing a project already.
Right.
Where I was going to travel the country.
Yeah.
In a biodiesel truck with a fifth wheel, and we were going to film all the best historical sites, all part of the trail too, and film hiking these beautiful footpaths to rail lines, maybe even cycling some. And this is before I put on this weight. And then COVID hit, and COVID had a huge impact on me too, because I had sponsors lined up, I had people willing to do it, I had the money to do it, I had everything right there. We were pretty much ready to go, and then COVID happened, and they shut down borders, and they shut down the whole plan. And when that happens, all the sponsors turned their resources into COVID money.
Yeah, which is not a surprise, right?
No. So now I have to regain, when COVID's over,
Yeah.
I have to reapply for all these things and rebuild, and then I also have to rebuild myself.
But you're the guy that did the longest walk of anybody in the hike in the world.
Yeah.
Of billions and billions of people.
Yeah.
Makes you unique. You can do anything.
Yeah.
So what I did is I didn't do that, So but what I did do is I had my struggles and challenges, as many of us do, right? But I always wanted to write a book, and so what I did, I wrote this book.
Nice.
And what I say about the book, it took me 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, and 2 years to write it.
There you go.
And I want you to do the same as I did. And and I'm going to give you a copy of this book. I just have to find another one here. This one has the first page missing, but I will give you a book before we're done. And it is a challenge, but after you did all the things that you did, you should be able to do it and do it well. You certainly have the story, and you have the ability and the know-how. Writing a book is a challenge. I would not suggest that it isn't. And but the information is all available all around you. And the biggest part of it is really having the story and then kind of putting it together after that and writing it. And you have all the elements that people would be immensely interested in because of all the things that you did, and the longest hike, as you call it, in the world of all the people, and going right across Canada from east to west and from north to south is just absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah, it was a long walk.
So from here on in, then, COVID has set all of us back, and people are getting, more than 2 years, and has been a challenge for many of us.
Oh, for sure.
And especially in your particular case, where I can see already you were in the phase of recovery from the long walk, hike, and then we're close to having a new goal, and then what happened is COVID, but I think you have all the ability and certainly the record of saying, okay, I'm going to get myself in shape, and then from there on in, I'm going to do whatever else you want to do. And the world is, all the challenges are there, and you know how to attack them, and yeah.
Yeah, I've learned a lot on the journey, that's for sure. Yeah. And a lot of things that are transferable.
Yeah.
Like how to overcome challenges, that's for sure.
Yeah. And so anything else that comes to mind that you wanted to talk about, or as we closely get
I think just not really, because there's so much I've seen and done that this podcast could go on for days, and that's what the book is going to be all about.
Yeah,
I think not writing the book would be a travesty.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah,
yeah, and then not taking what I've learned about the country, just my knowledge of the country, because I walked through 1,000 Canadian cities and towns and 15,000 communities, and so I have a unique perspective. So if somebody says, "Where are you from?" chances are I know where they're from. And I could say, "Oh, I know something about your town," or "I know that," or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And to not follow up with all that hard work and that perspective that I've gained, I think would also be a travesty.
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely a career there where I can kind of follow up with what I've done.
Yeah.
Something new. So that's my next goal.
Excellent, Dana. So I have for you a book. I have signed it with your name, and let it be an inspiration to yours. And I look forward to
appreciate that. Thank you.
You writing your book, because
really.
You should share it with the rest of the world.
Yeah, I will.
Thanks, Dana.
Thank you.